ξεκινήσουμε. Καλησπέρα σε όλους.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. First of all, I would like to stress that when it comes to the people being here, all necessary health protocols have been adhered to. This night's hybrid workshop, which takes place within the framework of the program Resistance, will be held in Greek. Nevertheless, we will have an interpretation in English for those who are following it through Zoom, but also through the official YouTube channel of the program. As the president of the Union of the Firefighters who have been at the university, I would like to thank you very much, to welcome you to this webinar. Disasters and megadisasters have been during the past, and during this climate crisis we will have more in the future, without giving us any notice and without letting us know when and how they will take place. During this summer we had the floods in Europe, especially in the Netherlands, Belgium and Germany. Moreover, in Greece we had to tackle a series of wildfires, a lot of wildfires, and very difficult to be extinguished. Let me mention today that we had an earthquake of 5.8 Richter degrees in Crete. And I would like to take this opportunity in order to express our condolences to the family of our fellow citizen who died, as well as to the population of Crete who has been affected by this tragic event. Now I will give the floor to Professor Karabelias in order to make an introduction, I'm sorry, to this program. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Before speaking, I would like to start by saying thank you on behalf of the members of the workshop Resistance for the presentation of, for the fact that my colleague, Mr. Grigorios Varas, who is consulting the president for being here, for the representative of the region of Attica, Mrs. Parpagani, for the vice mayor of Iliopoli, Mr. Koklas, for being here, for the representatives of religions, for the active and retired members of the Fire Corps, and of course the officials of the Fire Academy, the fourth-year students who are here with us, as well as everyone participating either physically or digitally to this workshop. Just a few words about the Resistance program. Resistance project started in January 2021 and will be concluded at the end of June 2022. This workshop is implemented within the framework of the midterm report, which will be given at the end of September 21, where the first half of the program will be computed. According to this workshop's agendas, we will have two sessions. During the first, the Professor Dimitrios Emmanouloudis and the Assistant Professor Mr. Michalis Halaris will speak with the topic Lessons Learned from Recent Megadisasters in Europe. Later, Dr. Aspasia Karamanou will present her study on the role of volunteers in the homicidal disasters. While at the second session, Dr. Kalliopi Kravari will talk on the project's progress until today, and later on, after the partners' remarks and interventions, Mr. Miliaras will demonstrate the equipment of the rescue team Delta. Then we will have questions, both from the physical participants, also from the people who attend the webinar online. Right now, I would like to ask Professor Grigoris Varas to greet this webinar. Dear colleague, unfortunately, the speaker is off the mic and the interpreters cannot follow.
Okay. Σας ευχαριστώ.
Thank you very much. Unfortunately, we cannot express our feelings with words, and I know that Greece has been really plagued during the last years. Nevertheless, in my opinion, resistant program comes to actually fill in the gaps of the existing programs and would like to offer with its knowledge and conclusions valuable information and insights to the people that are interested in civil protection. Therefore, I would like to invite Professor Dimitris Emmanouilidis of the International Hellenic University to join me here at the podium. Professor, you have the floor. Ladies and gentlemen, dear guests, hello, good evening. I know that we are all rather gloomy and sad since this morning there was an unpleasant surprise, if I may say so, and the third of the evils, earthquake, struck once again. Unfortunately, Greece has been plagued from all three natural disasters. There are floods happening, homicidal floods, since we also experience wildfires. Thank God, today we had only but a few victims, and unfortunately we also have a lot of earthquakes. And I say that Greece has this sad privilege because other countries do not suffer at the same time from all three disastrous events. They may suffer from floods, for example, or suffer from wildfires, but they do not belong in an earthquake area. Greece, unfortunately, has been plagued from all those three natural disasters. Today, it was the earthquake's turn. There was an earthquake in Crete, rather unexpectedly. And personally, I would also like to express my condolences and my sympathy to the people that have been affected, and especially to the family of our late fellow citizen. As Mr. Karabelias said a few minutes ago, in my keynote speech that I share with my colleague Mr. Halaris, we will talk about the lessons that we have learned from the recent disasters during the summer. We're going to talk about the floods and then the wildfires. I will start with the floods that took place this last August in Germany, Belgium, and the Netherlands, since it was rather shocking for us because we tend to believe that such organized states would not have so disastrous results, especially when it comes to the casualties, to the human lives that have been lost. And now let's try to understand why this happened. Before starting with my presentation, I would like to say that in order to be able to connect that with our program Resistant, since some of you may be asking yourselves, why do we make this presentation? Resistant program has as its main scope to network the citizens of all categories, both urban citizens and citizens in the region who may find themselves amongst natural disasters, not only with them, but also with the authorities, to prepare them and also to raise awareness. And through those elements, we try to safeguard them in order to be ready, and when this moment will come, they will be able to react, always having as a goal to not to have casualties, and of course not lose their houses. However, we have seen that in both cases, not only in the floods of the Western Europe, but also in the wildfires in Greece, both events can be characterized as megadisasters. In the first event, we were not able to avoid casualties, and in the second event, in the wildfires, we had a lot of disasters. Therefore, we asked ourselves, since we focus on preparedness and awareness raising, and in all those ways that we try to do the above-mentioned network, what happened? What can we learn in order to be able to include this in our program, since our program is still ongoing? And the conclusions that we will come and its remedies to be included in the best practices that we will propose after the project. So we will focus on 4 or 5 elements that we had problems, and we will try to propose shortly 4 or 5 solutions, let's say. Here you can see some images from the web, the floods in Germany. You can see a truly mega disaster, which happened in one of the most organized states of the world. No one could have imagined that something like that could happen, especially me. I collect images from all around the world from floods, and I have images from all around the world, Asia, South Americas, or other regions of the world. I could have never imagined that I would add some time to that collection, an image from Germany. Okay, so what happened? The cities in the middle of Europe, since the Roman ages, were always built, the greatest of them, and even today you can understand that if you take a look around the greatest cities of Europe, nearby rivers. London, for example, which is built upon the Thames, Paris on the Seine, and so on. Vienna, for example, on the Danube. So all the cities of Europe are built on the rivers, on the banks of the rivers, for example, due to the trade, due to the fact that they could use those rivers as roads. And this is why people have been building their cities on the banks of the rivers. Unfortunately, we can see from this image, from this picture, so you can see the lampposts and the road. Therefore, one can imagine the disaster, and here we can see it even better. We have the river which flooded. The water has reached the second level of the houses, and here there was no stream, no river. Unfortunately, the water decided elsewhere, since it didn't have any other way to go. Nevertheless, there was a big flood, which, of course, created all those disastrous effects, and we had hundreds of people who died. So let's move forward. Every flooding event, every flood, let's say, has its remedies up to a point. If we are going to succeed into doing this, it is related to the number of the casualties that we will have or we will not have. Its anti-disastrous flooding action in urban areas is dominated by 4 phases. The first is the so-called awareness phase, the phase that we try to inform and raise awareness amongst the citizens. The second is the warning phase. The third is the evacuation phase. And the fourth is the safe sheltering phase. Now, in the case of Germany, it was found that the instructions and information that residents had, such as films, such as advertisements, were very good. What they should do in cases of flood, for example, that they should avoid going to the basements. They should try and go as high as they can, or even in the roofs of the buildings. However, at the point that they see that their lives are at risk, we tend to forget those things, and that information that have been given to them, they are forgotten. So our suggestion is the following. What the people in the UK did at first, they have very small and easy to use brochures in pocket editions with just 4 leaves. For example, in the region of Gloucester, they forced the citizens to have them on the refrigerator, in the living room, or in the kitchen, in the fridge, next to the shopping list at any given point. And they also instructed them to have a bag ready, a survival kit, if you wish, that contains the necessary things for the first hours. So as soon as the information was given to them, they would be able to take a look at it and then take the bag, the survival kit, and leave the house.
Now, let's move on to the second remark. It is a remark that corresponds to the phase B. Remember that we're talking about a 4-phase construction. Now, in the second case, we know that the forecasting systems and tools are excellent. They have weather forecasting, water forecasting, risk assessment models, and this means that the citizens are notified on time. But what happens in the cases where, well, you know that in order for a flood to occur, then a storm must have happened earlier. And sometimes we know that those extreme weather conditions might destroy the warning sirens, they might also cause a power shortage. And this means that there are no telephones available. So some areas found themselves with no power and with no connection for the phones. And in this case, we know that there's no possibility of informing or warning someone either through their cell phones. Hopefully, we are not affected by this weakness. And of course, no other electronic means is an option. This is something that happens in affected areas where they have very severe phases of floods and very extreme storms. When we talk about the Middle Europe and Northern Europe, those storms are different than ours. They're more intense, they last longer. But I'm not here to talk about the weather conditions, I just wanted to highlight this issue. So as a suggestion in that case, well, we want to have an independent electronic circuit. This means that this independent standalone system should be based either on generators, as it is based on this text that you can see on the slide, or maybe sensors should be put in place, and those sensors should be activated by another circuit, another network that is located further away from the affected area. And can you see here in this image, when we talk about levels of awareness and alert, see what's happening on this image. This is the riverbed. In that case, we have zone A. Those are the houses that flood the first. Then we have the medium, the moderate zone, and then we have other zones that never flood. So those are the zones that are different. We have the A zone, which is where there is the highest risk of citizens to be drowned. In the second zone, the risk is lower. The third zone is not affected at all. So if we install independent sensors at the yards of the houses, those sensors can be activated depending on the water level. And you don't have to be an expert to realize that as soon as the water reaches specific levels, then the sensors need to be activated. Those beepers are activated. Those beepers are activated by another generator that is activated due to the water flow. And this beeper activates the alert system and the warning system for the citizens, because sometimes those things happen at night and some people drown. You know, water is very dangerous because it might take you by surprise. And when it comes to extrications, for example, fire has always been dangerous. People have always been afraid of the fire. It causes smoke. People are asphyxiating. It causes crackling noises. But I believe that no human being, no other living being on this earth will stay close to the fire. It's easy for you to be alerted. In the flood, when we talk about water, you know, water can be treacherous. People will say, no, I'm very high and the water can't reach this level. Many people believe that the water will not enter the house if their doors are shut. And then they see that water can penetrate not only the glass windows, but also the walls. So you do realize that water is a very difficult case, and this is why it's more difficult for the rescue teams to persuade and convince the citizens, get out of your houses or else you will drown. Now, another phenomenon we saw in the Germany's floods. We saw that some of the citizens were faced with mobility impairments and restrictions, or they were among the elderly. They were not able to move, they were not able to see or hear. Some did not hear, did not listen to the instructions. Some others listened to them, but they were unable to move. You can see this image. This is a person with motor impairment, and then a lady follows. This woman follows normally, which means that maybe this lady might be challenged in other ways. Those people, and many of those people who fell under those categories, were lost. What's the suggestion in this case? Well, of course, we need to take stock of the situation. Of course, I know that we talk about sensitive data, but at the level of the neighborhood, we need to record and register all the losses. We need to know where those people live. Of course, it's not compulsory. If those people wish to share their status and position and location, they can do that. This is just like the case when people travel by plane and they state whether they have any dietary restrictions or whether they follow specific medications, etc. So in that way, the civil protection authorities are notified of those specificities and particularities. And it is in these cases where it is strongly recommended to take stock of people with special needs or people who are among the elderly and cannot move freely or independently. This means that the rescue crews will address the needs of those people first, specifically those people at this particular address, in this particular floor, in this particular apartment, etc. And to my personal view, one of the biggest problems is the denial or the refusal of citizens to abandon their places or the delays in abandoning their homes. Sometimes this is a choice that leads to their death. I'm afraid that this was the case as well in Germany. Like I said before, water is treacherous. It means that sometimes people don't feel the urgency to escape, to abandon their house. So this delay means that as soon as this person makes his decision, you can see what's happening there. Things have deteriorated a lot. This is a family that delayed to make the right decision, and they were asking for help, and as a result, everyone was in danger, the rescuers included as well. Now, which is a suggestion in this case? Well, bullying. Bullying, yes. In other words, before this disaster takes place, when people are trained, they need to be trained at the level of seminars organized in the municipality or in the regions, and maybe people need to watch specific videos, and the citizens should participate in those seminars because this will help them understand what will happen in case they delay to leave their house. So we need to intimidate people. Well, last summer, in the case of fires, this was not necessary because, like I said, fire is different. When I found myself in floods in northern Greece, I had a grandmother saying that, okay, I have put the blanket behind the door, the water won't be able to enter. So you need to do that using augmented reality applications. We know now that a picture is worth 1,000 words. So it's useful to capitalize on those techniques and technologies in order for people to have a better overview of what will happen if they don't leave the house or if they delay too much. In Australia, they have taken that a step further. There's an institute at the Sydney University. Mr. Haller is as well aware of that, and they're working on the psychological factor depending on their mentality, their mindset, their age and origin. They're trying to come up with ways to convince those people, of course. This happens in the non-disastrous times, They are persuaded and convinced by psychologists on what they need to do in case of emergency, because we know that people are not that willing to leave their goods that they have struggled for a lifetime to obtain behind. So we know that people believe that if they leave, their house will be destroyed, and they have the illusion that if they stay inside, they will be able to defend the house, but this is not the case. In the case of fire, okay, this might be applicable to a certain extent. We saw that at Evia, some people stayed at their homes. They were splashing their roofs, their yards, etc., and they were able to do something. But in the case of flood, this is not the case at all. You cannot stop water. Lastly, when it comes to the other problem, is a problem of disorientation. Usually, floods might occasionally happen at daytime, but most of them happen at night. Why is that? Because we're not talking about the weather aspects. The majority of those cases happen after the middle of the day. Of course, we know that floods have happened in the morning, but in general, the storm happens in the middle of the day, so we know that the water accumulates and the level begins to rise. And in the dark, things are pretty nasty. Can you imagine you having to leave your home? It rains, there's no light, you're frightened, and sometimes there are victims that have lost their bearings, and rather than heading to safety, they are heading to unsafe areas and they drown. We have seen that in the Western Europe floods and in other cases. What is the suggestion in that case? Well, the municipalities and the regions could capitalize on the Google applications. They could create escape videos depending on the geospatial, relief, and other features of the area. Well, that's a rough description. You can see the water coming from the hill. You can see which is the indicated course. Of course, you don't need to go against the tide. You can see those indices marked in green and other indices marked in red. The red indicates wrong course. Well, okay, how can we install them? Well, they can be installed, and even if people are afraid, they will be able to follow them, maybe under the names of the streets on the roads. This is where we can place them. So the street signs can also serve as an indices on the basis of autonomous and independent generators that can be activated as soon as the water level reaches a specific height. So the people who go into the streets, they need to know which is the course that they need to follow. Meaning that in that case, okay, they have agreed to leave their homes because they don't want to be drowned inside their home. And then they might get drowned in the street. I'm afraid I don't have more time. So thank you for your attention. I will stop here in order to pass the floor to Professor Hallers. But before that, I would like to say the following. You have seen what has happened in organized countries. The Netherlands also had victims and casualties. And why do we have those casualties? Because some simple things were not in place or did not work. We're not here to reinvent the wheel. It's not that we have come up with all those brand new ideas. It's just things that we have linked to all those instances. And I would like to say that what I have just presented is the key topic of the newsletter of ECHO. This is the Civil Protection Address for Crisis Management from the Commission. So you do realize that our work has been selected to be published there, so maybe there are a few truths in there. So I would like now to pass the floor to my friend Michalis Halleris. Simple things Simple procedures, simple thoughts can save hundreds of lives, even in advanced countries.
We will have questions at the end. Thank you very much, Mr. Manouloudis, for this very detailed description of the recent events in Germany, in the Netherlands, and the Belgium. And now, Mr. Halaris, you have the floor. Mr. Halaris will talk about the recent wildfires that happened during July and August 2021 in Greece. Thank you very much. Based on today's earthquake and based on what Mr. Manouloudis and I will talk about, there is a conclusion. And I'm saying that mainly for the cadets. I don't want to repeat myself when it comes to the smoke and its effects, because I have discussed that with the cadets in the academy. I just want to say that its crisis can be an opportunity. Our country has the sad privilege, as we have said before, that a lot of kinds of disasters happen here. So we should have been able to learn our lessons and be leaders and be able to give advice to the rest of the world. Since we have the representative of the region of Attica here with us, I want also to mention technological disasters. And we know that the managing system is not very sound. It needs some restructuring. So now we will talk about the lessons learned from the recent wildfires in Greece. Wildfires are a phenomenon which is strictly combined with Greece. Even in ancient history, there are a lot of mentions in wildfires, not only in Attica but also in other areas. Let me remind you that when Hercules went to kill the monster, put fire to the forest in order to be able to find the monster with a lot of heads. And there are also mentions in the Iliad and Hesiod. So the same keeps happening in the contemporary history. During the 50 years, the number of the wildfires has been multiplied due to the fact of human activities. And we also have new activities such as tourism, the development of beach houses, and the disasters of the wildfires has been intensified due to the biomass which was in the forest because we keep building houses next to the forest. The climate crisis, allow me to use the word crisis and not change. We were talking about change on the previous decades, and the desertification have been growing on very quickly, and which allows us to understand that mega disasters will be more and more a part of our lives. Also, we will have liquid winters and dry summers, which means that in the forest we will have a huge tons, if you say, biomass ready to be burned. The Hellenic Fire Corps now will have to fight a lot of wildfires due to the climate crisis. Just to mention that the increase of the temperature of 2 degrees more can be translated in an increase of the wildfires in Greece to 62%. And if there is an increase of 3 degrees Celsius, that would mean that the average of fires will be doubled. So regardless of the personnel and the equipment as firefighters, you will have to fight those disastrous wildfires that will keep increasing, and their consequences will be tragic. Therefore, their tackling needs another way of prevention, preparation, and the best possible effort that will allow us to tackle climate change. August of 2021, and allow me to use I apologize. You know that it is very difficult, the training of those Marines, of the SEALs. So August 2021 was a very difficult month for those people. So you can see at the slide the areas that we had wildfires in Greece, which lasted long, and at the same time, lots of thousands of streamers were burned. I just want to mention ancient Olympia, which for one more time, a archaeological space was endangered, and this should be discussed by the Greek government, how we should protect our monuments and our museums, but also the millions of tourists and the thousands of workers who work there, and how we can protect them from the disasters. And you can also see that I have pinpointed area with a red arrow because we chose to discuss area since it has a special characteristic. The forest that was burned there was not abandoned as the other forests around Greece. The local population lives from that forest and on that forest. We have workers who work on the raising, and we will see the consequences later. So it is a fact that the disaster, as you can see from the burn severity map, was total. And you can see in this picture. However, what makes the situation even worse is that this wildfire has allowed us to see some risks that unfortunately could be fatal in a lot of cases. And I will explain later. So by watching this burn severity map, we can understand that there is a high severity fire, but at the same time, there are areas that were not burned, and this can give us hope because it can boost the natural, let's say, rebirth. 85% of this area was susceptible to fire from moderate to severe, and only a small percent was not burned. 9% and 6% may seem low to you, but they are really important because based on that percentage of the area that was not burned at all or just by a few, it is that will allow us to rebirth our forests. So just a quick look of that map of the geomorphology of the affected area. We can understand that the burnt area had new systems that can really be broken, and that rocks can affect that event. But what I want you really to remember as a conclusion for the geology of the area, it means that it is very since it has those kinds of rocks and those kinds of material, it can be easily burned. You can see in this picture a large rock. It is not the only rock. Due to its volume, it is very dangerous for the houses that are below. It is in the village of Limni, and we have also some torrents there. The management after the fire should include two distinct phases. The first phase will have as a goal to do anti-erosion works at the area and anti-flooding works, and that should be finished immediately in order to avoid floods downstream, but also to protect the soil in the first period after the fire, since the erosion risk is very high there. And the second, which is also very important, we should have as a goal the ecological rebirth of the area since we have Mediterranean plants that we know that can revive themselves. There are some, of course, characteristics that need to be monitored continuously. And at the other picture, on the right of the slide, you understand that we should take away all those burnt branches. And of course, there are some trees that are not burned, which should also be removed, but also show us that really the area can revive itself. The other map that we can see, which is very important, is the map of erosionability. Erosion susceptibility, I apologize, which allows us to understand that the landslide susceptibility in the fire affected area is also high. Therefore, we have created this map that took into consideration the worst case scenario, that we will lose a lot of soil for each of the basins of the area. Therefore, we have seen that we should take specific measures in order to allow this forest to revive itself. However, what I forgot to mention is that there was also another problem. This was a forest that was used. People worked there, they were collecting resin. For those of you that remember what we learned in the second and third year, has specific chemical unions that could be more flammable. It is like throwing napalm bombs within the forest since there was a lot of resin in every tree. And this is a special characteristic when it comes to the intensity of the fire in that area.
On the basis of all those comments, and given that this workshop is also addressed to international audience, I would like to show you the usefulness of the European mechanism of civil protection, the well-known RescEU. It's something that started in Greece. It was inspired mainly by the new Minister for Crisis Management, or rather the Climate Crisis and Civil Protection Minister, Mr. Stylianidis, who is today responsible to handle the Alkalahori in Crete earthquake. He's working in the field. And we also have 11 countries participating there. And the overall number of firefighters who joined and rallied their forces last August has been the biggest mobilization of forces in Europe, something that makes justice in practical terms of what the RescEU inspirer had envisaged when they said that we cannot have major disasters, mega disasters, and just offering our condolences. We need to offer something more to the citizens so that they can perceive the usefulness of the EU. This is a practical input, a practical contribution, a practical overview of how Europe supports the affected countries. And of course, we know that this help, this aid, is not only addressed to EU member states. Here you can see all the other countries that helped us and rushed to help. Israel, and I'd like to make special reference because we also have the former ambassador of Israel in Greece, Mr. Abraham, others from Egypt, United Arab Emirates, Qatar, Kuwait, US. Well, I believe that we have received so much help, and this was in reciprocity as an exchange to our help and support that we have offered through the civil protection mechanism, something that happens very quickly, and of course thanks to the concerted efforts of our court. Just like Mr. Emanuelou said, we have the emergency phone number 112. Well, now I believe that this has been implemented in Greece since January 2020. So this is an innovation. And the innovation has to do with the following fact. It helped alert people regarding the fact that they needed to leave massively some areas. People can also be informed regarding special and extreme conditions, for example, excessive smoke. The same happened to the cases where the likelihood of a fire was very increased, and those areas received this notification through this number. Or other messages were sent saying that there's a high risk for fire, and at the same time, people need to refrain from other riskful activities. In the time period we studied, we saw that 76 such messages were sent. Now, let's look into some comments and proposals. Those are proposals that address not only wildfires, but also all types of disasters. Those are public policy proposals. It is policy, not politics. So the process of disasters and disaster management is not easy at all. And we know that the response mechanisms need to go beyond merely managing the cultural, natural and man-made disasters, and they need to focus on a more integrated approach to risk management. I believe that now everyone has understood that very well. We need to understand that the best, even the most robust response mechanism is unable to handle large-scale disasters unless it has included the entire society in its operational planning. And this is where volunteering comes in, because I believe that those of you who attend know that volunteers can hold a major role, but under the right circumstances, not everyone is fit for everything. And if the best plans focus on managing and tackling the consequences and the impact of disasters, meaning the consequences that have to do with the management of the affected areas and the hospitalization of the affected population. Of course, we need to optimize those systems, and we need to optimize them, because sometimes we heard that 112 has not been used properly. Well, I have to say that given the circumstances, nothing different could have been done. Firefighters realize that because it's better mobilizing people without a reason rather than having deaths. We need to opt for smart alerts, smart warning. That's a very promising field, because we need to be able to know who needs to leave, when they have to leave. So we need that to become more focused and targeted. And of course, we need to redesign the communication policy regarding risk alerting and warning. Our fellow citizens need to understand their individual and collective responsibility. We all need to understand, we all need to ensure awareness raising through education and training. And in order to achieve all the things I mentioned before, of course, we need a crisis, a disaster response mechanism, something that can create the right plan for crisis management. And we have a recent law. And on the basis of my experience, because I'm also part of the academia and I'm also an operational officer, it is a law that came to add to what the previous equally good law was providing for. For the time being, I'm afraid that due to COVID, most of its provisions have been suspended, and this is why we're faced with all these problems. The new ministry need to undertake the strategic planning, the monitoring of the implementation of the plan, and of course, the design and implementation of specific civil protection measures shall be exercised by the local authorities. Now, a good case study. Well, for all disasters, we need to have a specific disaster management folder. This also included in a relevant provision of the latest law. And why am I saying that we need to have a disaster file? Because we need to learn from what has happened in the past. we have been faced with megafires in 2000, 2007, 2009, 2012, 2018, 2021. But it seems that no one has ever bothered putting all those things together in a file to see what worked well, what did not work that well. It's not just a blame game. No, we want to see the flaws and the defects of the mechanism, the response mechanism, as long as to establish the strengths. So the civil protection created this file, and I have included, of course, many things that you can see on the slide. I'm not going to bore you with the details about all of them, but those are the things that should be included in such a file, specifically about wildfires. I think I'm going to skip that. As you know, I prefer to talk about practical things. Maybe we can now watch a video. Please press on the presentation. Tap on that. Yes. So, in my laboratory, we have tried this specific fire extinguishing material. This is an experiment where we try to add to the fire flammable material. This is diesel. And we use this particular fire extinguishing solution that we use for the wildfires this summer. It's a weighting agent. Here you can see that they're going to throw 6 spoonfuls, let's say, and you can see how this extinguished the fire. This particular agent is a chemical compound mix. No need to analyze that, but we believe that it can work wonders when it comes to extinguishing wildfires, and we need to include that in our actions. And I would also like to say that this team, 2 of the members are here, were honored enough to have our work included in 2019. Well, I'm afraid that that was the last one that was published in the United Nations Office for Disaster Risk Reduction publications regarding the Global Assessment Report on Disaster Risk Reduction. That's all I had to say. I would like to thank you for your attention. Okay, I know that we're completely out of time schedule. I'm sorry about that. Thank you so much. I would like, of course, to thank you so much. Now you're an assistant professor, Mr. Halleris. Thank you for this lecture. And of course, we realize that it's very useful to capitalize on both the scientific and operational background that you have. In light, of course, of the new doctrine evangelized by the current administration, focusing on prevention and preparedness. Now, let's move forward with our next presenter, Dr. Karamanou. She's the General Director of the region of the Northern Aegean. She's going to talk about the role of volunteers in the homicidal disasters. Dr. Karamanou, you have the floor. Hello, everyone. I would like to thank you for this invitation. I'd like to congratulate you on this event. Well, I will try to be as brief as possible.
Πείτε μου αν φαίνεται η παρουσία.
Can you see my presentation? So, you can say that in order to understand the dynamics of the societies, we have been trying to understand that through a lot of times, and this has how we try to support the public authorities to provide safety to the citizens. People that work or live there, since they are near to that positions, take up action, and a lot of times even earlier than the state system. The survivors of the disaster participate actively in those efforts. People who will go to the disaster area will interact with each other, but also with the state officials. They may be trained to what they do or not trained. They may be members of a group or with a specific legal form and hierarchy, or to have spontaneous groups. They help maybe a habit or something that they're doing for the first time. They may be connected with the system, or they may be autonomous. So human behavior is the solidarity and the volunteer offering, and such a behavior may be described as volunteerism. So this volunteer action may be done by different forms each time, and it depends by the intensity and the disaster. We have first aid, we have firefighting action, efforts to cover the needs, or giving away money or items. And this volunteering help is very important, especially in big-scale disasters where the intervention needs are always a lot, and we know that the state cannot always come up to it. Volunteers may be a very good human resources and can also offer their skills and their equipment. At the same time, and despite their efforts, placing the volunteers at those circumstances may be a challenge. And sometimes it can also not allow the state officials and create issues of health and risk. Let me say that despite the presence of very skilled systems of managing, the volunteers, when we cannot avoid volunteers in such circumstances, volunteering response will happen. Either we will call for them or not. The responsibility and the urge of those people to do something may reach very high levels, even of those people who do not have an official role. Even if they were not asked, the people will come up to the needs that they understand that they are there, without and sometimes being in a position to understand that what they can offer may not be necessary. So within this framework, we should have very strict managing systems in order to use their advantages and diminish the risks, and this is high. In all organized states, either less or more, we have policies towards this direction. So the definitions describe volunteers as people that help others without needing something in return. Nevertheless, we have some discussion about what action is voluntary action and which persons can be described as volunteers. So describing volunteerism in disasters is very multifaceted, regarding the taking always in mind the framework and also the cultural background of those people. Various definitions focus on the notion of the activities of the volunteers, and there is also a discussion on how we categorize volunteers. The most common, if you say, categorization is to permanent volunteers and affiliated volunteers if they are affiliated with recognized agencies or with the state management, crisis management system. So within the framework of the state system for managing crisis, we have other definitions regarding the notion of the volunteer. You can see those definitions by the FEMA of the United States of America and the Australia agency, those volunteers put those definitions, I apologize, put volunteers in the center of the system where they have to respect the law and the framework. And while most of people use those definitions, the unaffiliated volunteers or the spontaneous volunteers and their participation is recognized more and more. According to sociological studies, allowed us to have more information regarding the behavior of the volunteers. The participation of the volunteers is regarded as one of the principles that allow us to diminish the risks and to create even more resilience. They are natural, reliable, since they are not paid, and therefore they do not have a financial interest to what they can or cannot do. The proximity of the volunteers and the local knowledge means that very often they have to play critical roles when it comes to first response, even before the state officials will reach the place. Even the unofficial action of the volunteers and the emerging groups as part of the social dynamics of those groups consists of very important resources when we have natural disasters. The bigger the disaster and the bigger that will be the more that will be covered by the mass media, the more people will convert it from, not only from local areas but also from other areas. And despite the fact that mass media depict volunteer actions as positive, this mass convergence at the area of disaster should be so big that in reality it may be a problem more than an advantage. So the volunteering is very important in less developed societies where it could be the only measure sometimes. So in the most developed countries, following the international recommendations and conclusions, the management of the crisis is based on the professional and skilled personnel, and sometimes of volunteers that are affiliated to the response activities. We know that the organized volunteers are now part of the official first response, and the states want to find permanent volunteers in order to, let's say, streamline those efforts. Permanent volunteers as part of the crisis management system are included in the official policy documents. Their participation is regulated by legal frameworks, and they also are part of the planning. They have a higher commitment if we were to compare them with the other volunteers, and the other volunteers and the emerging groups often are not taken into consideration when we plan the management of the disasters, and they rather operate ad hoc. Even during the last years, there is a trend of changing those practices in order to use as best as possible also emerging volunteers, since those volunteers are less potential to become volunteers again, and they are not always satisfied by their experience. So if those volunteers understand their mission, understand the effect of their work, and have the chance to find the satisfaction in what we're doing, they may come back. We also know that also the emerging groups may be more committed if the people that are there have to do a specific action, a specific job, or they have a list of, let's say, responsibilities. And some of those emerging groups may then become legal persons, and they may have, let's say, an hierarchy. In a lot of cases, volunteers are still faced with hesitation or aversion by officials, since they believe that they are rather amateurs, or that they cause more problems than the benefits. And a lot of times their efforts are downplayed. Even emerging groups may sometimes be faced with a very bad behavior, and they are trying to remove them from their side. some of them, they try to become part of the official system through the efforts that are done by organizations such as the Red Cross, since the Red Cross uses those emerging volunteers, or they train them, or they give them equipments. The large number of volunteers that may converge to a disastrous event may be so big that the system cannot manage them. And since we don't always have such a strong management system, those volunteers they act based on their knowledge, and then their action may be harmful. Therefore, the authorities don't always know how and which those non-affiliated groups are, and they don't know how to manage those non-affiliated groups. So the complexity of the relationships, we understand, that makes the situation even more difficult. We understand that there are a lot of similar examples, but also we have found ways and methodological tools in order to improve the skills of that community reaction, such as training, communication, development of social synergies. Volunteers that converge on great numbers on the disastrous area may not allow for the official states to operate, and may become a problem to those operations, since sometimes they do not follow the safety protocols, they are not typically trained or technically trained, and since a lot of times they don't have the equipment, the means, they don't have the food or water, or they haven't found a place in order to stay there. Even if they have some skills and knowledge, the credential that they may have or not have may not be able for us to actually prove. That behavior may be risky not only for themselves but also for the survivors, since they do not allow the officials to operate, since they do not allow the officials to do their job. We may also have issues of liabilities for various disasters, and we understand that the volunteers are always willing to help, but since they are not a part of the decision-making system, they may, and the fact that they don't have the information and they are not properly coordinated may be a problem, and they may not follow and adhere to the rules. Volunteers that do not understand the local culture of the affected area may show lack of sensitivity, and they may cause conflicts not only with the officials but also with the survivors. And the survivors may not accept that volunteering group and will not be able to collaborate with them. And in order to help the victims build their lives, it is necessary for the volunteers to be accepted in order to be able to work with them. So, according to the studies, we understand that the stress and the PSTD also affects the volunteers. The personnel may have stress and may be very tired. They may be also victimized. We talk about depression, PSTD, neurological disorders, such as chronic fatigue that also is combined with stress. When it comes to the volunteers, we will understand that there is a gap in the studies.
According to research findings, when it comes to the long-term psychological symptoms, effects, particularly the PTSD, it has been found that those levels were higher among the volunteers compared to the emergency staff. Sometimes they were equal or similar to the levels of the survivors, whereas one should consider that there are discrepancies in the assessment criteria used. for survivors and volunteers. For example, in some studies, population had to be homogeneous, so they didn't assess parameters such as the qualifications or the training level. On top of that, sometimes no one cares to deal with the surviving volunteers after the traumatic event. We saw that the PTSD diagnosis among volunteer responders might reach up to 46%. And this also changes depending on the duration of the study as well as the specific characteristics of the people asked. Sometimes volunteers might be faced with denial, might be faced with other emotionally suppressed situations. They might be restrained, they might appear to be calm on the surface, because they are afraid of losing respect among the other emergency staff or the fellow citizens who in this case believe that they wouldn't otherwise be up to the task of helping them. Those things can have a protective effect in the short term, but in the long term this might bring about more important health problems. One of the main prognostic factors that is considered to be linked in the increased onset of stress-borne symptoms has to do with the exposure of volunteers to stressful events and duties, especially when this entails contact with the victims, when they have to remove victims or people who have died, remove those people from the rubble, evacuation of unsafe buildings, the provision of psychosocial service and support to the people affected, or their exposure to dangerous and harmful environments. In those cases, people are injured at all levels because they have to process what they see, what they touch, what they smell. And when it comes to spontaneous volunteers, we know that sometimes they are called upon to deal with issues that they might not have been prepared for, which is not the case with all the affiliated volunteers. And their role means that they're exposed to very dangerous and complicated environments when the extent of the risk or the extent of the disaster is that which requires volunteers equally with the professional staff. They need to be able to satisfy and meet ad hoc the requests coming in, or they might be able to operate for specific time periods, sometimes weeks or months, and they're exposed to cruel living conditions. The lack of previous professional experience is directly linked to feelings of anxiety or symptoms of PTSD. It has been proven that volunteers with no previous disaster experience run high risk of experiencing this PTSD symptomatology. And when we talk about contacts with the survivors, then this might also serve as a protective factors. People working in the field are very likely to be part of the survivors group. They might have suffered personal losses or damages, and this is one of the strongest long-term predictive factors for psychological distress. And in some other cases, volunteers might come from the affected area or not, meaning, Miss Caramano, I'm sorry for interrupting you, but I'm sorry we don't have more time. Please, we would like you to wrap up at this point. 1 more minute. Okay, yes, thank you. It is estimated that half of the volunteers that step in after disaster come from the local community, meaning that it's more likely for them to identify or recognize the victims. They might be neighbors or friends. Psychosocial support is considered to be a strong prognostic factor for recovery. So, in conclusion, one might say that further research is required in order to identify the short and long-term impact and consequences, highlighting the characteristics and properties of volunteers, their needs in terms of education, support, communication, and information. Considering the deep impact of trauma and the long-term personal, social and professional burden that volunteers bear due to the disaster, specific policies need to be put in place and protocols for the right support and rehabilitation of the volunteers as well. Thank you for your attention. Thank you very much, Dr. Karamanou, for this highly comprehensive presentation. We know that volunteers-related issues are always of interest to us because the volunteers support the fire brigade, the civil protection units, and in the latest law of 2020, there is an entire chapter dedicated to the volunteers. However, I don't know whether this can be implemented or not. It remains to be seen in practice. Now, let's move forward with the presentation by Dr. Cravary from the International Hellenic University, and she will talk about the progress of the Megadisasters project. Hello, I hope you can hear me. Let me share my screen.
Στη συνέχεια λοιπόν όσων πολύ ενδιαφερόντων ακούσαμε, θα δούμε τώρα πώς προχωράμε με το έργο μας.
Further to that, now let's see what's the progress of the project. Like it has already been mentioned, this project focuses on training pupils and citizens on natural and man-made disasters. It consists of 7 partners scattered across 4 countries. Right now we're in the middle of the project. It is coordinated by the International Hellenic University. You can see the various partners here. The overall objective is to build the first European crisis training platform. We want this platform to include educational training, operational training, as well as training based on new technologies such as virtual and augmented reality. Now, you can see the pyramid of our operational objectives. Of course, we want to be able to support civil protection and disaster risk management actors, but in order to get there, we need to start from the basis, mapping the existing situation, the initiatives that have already been implemented. Then we move on to the implementation of an educational platform using the new technologies that I will elaborate on later. And of course, we want to update and expand the training program. Now, the overall strategic objective is to create a network of educators for the first and second responders. We want to create strong links between the first responders, people who need to face those natural and man-made disasters, of course at local level and cross-border level, or in the cases of countries being faced with similar challenges. Now, you can now see how we can organize all these things. In the context of the project, you can see that everything starts with the implementation of an observatory. And then we proceed to the implementation of the project and its validation. Now, when it comes to the first part, to the observatory part, we want to be able to analyze all the available infrastructure regarding the initiatives that are available in the scientific community in order to draw the conclusions showing us what is the thing that is important when we're called upon to manage risks and natural disasters. 20 projects have stood out. Those are projects from the last 5 years. They are modern, they're new, and either they have been completed over the past 1 or 2 years, or they might be ongoing. You can see those projects, some stand out. You can see some networking projects. You can also see some other tools. And of course, Throughout this process, we will discover more, I am sure. But what is important is not just focus on each and every research program and see what we can derive from that. If we focus on the scientific community, we can see that there are specific lessons learned from this observatory. What we saw is that we need technologies that will allow for the timely and prompt warning. How can we collect all these things? Well, this can be collected through collaboration. But in order to achieve collaboration, we need to have a way to collect information and collaborate in crisis management. In order to achieve that, we have identified 4 main actions that will be considered in the implementation of the project. The first action refers to cooperation and training. It's something that is widely acknowledged. It means that we always need to collaborate at cross-border level. And in order to do that, we need to establish a communication network. So now everyone says that we need to network, we need to come up with a way to collaborate and train each other. The second action refers to the collection of information. So in order to collaborate, we need to find a way to collect information, to gather information. And of course, we know that the use of satellites or other UAVs are just a part of the ways that we have in our disposal. For example, social media and posts uploaded by the citizens can be extremely useful. So now we have started considering them more and more. The third action complements the other two and proposes the development of an alert system. Of course, this is a difficult task because we need to provide this information real time. And the fourth action has to do with the development of a crisis management model. Only few come to this level because we know that there's a more complicated process where we need to consider the coordination of various different partners across various countries. So we need to come up with a way that will allow us to develop some models for collaboration. And it is to this end that we have proposed the use of augmented reality that will help us guide best our responses. Now, the outcome of this study, apart from the things I mentioned before, we have also come up with some indices and markers, things that are very important, things that are widely acknowledged. You can see here the top 10 key indicators in emergency and crisis management. Apart from that, we also have other relevant indicators. They might be secondary, but they're still relevant. And you can see here that we also have the volunteers figuring among the indicators. So we talk about material and immaterial resources. And this is why the Resistance Project refers and is addressed to citizens. Moving on now, apart from the observatory and this knowledge that has been accumulated, now we're in the phase of the implementation of the platform and its validation. This is something that will take place on the basis of real case scenarios. 4 cases that were implemented across various countries that participate in the project. The first has to do with educational training seminars for students and citizens in endangered areas, aiming to raise their awareness and preparedness. We also have cross-border use cases for emergency management frameworks, field training projects for the protection from floods, as well as training for situational awareness and emergency service interoperability in complex environments. This has already started. A big part of this material has been implemented, and right now we are in the first scenario implementation phase. Now, when it comes to resistance infrastructure, it consists of various aspects and components. First of all, this is a platform that has a dual purpose. The one purpose is to provide training material for the first responders, and the second is to provide training material and videos for citizens, professionals and non-professionals who are there in the areas. I'm talking about citizens, visitors. The second part has to do with the virtual school infrastructure and technology. It capitalizes on the augmented reality. It's already being used by the International Hellenic University. The third has to do with the virtual control room. I will elaborate on that later on. It has already been installed in the International Hellenic University. It is unique in Greece. And last but not least, we have the last component, the state-of-the-art emergency management system that provides a more detailed description of the components of the resistance educational training infrastructure. This platform is available on our website, and you can see that it is open to both trainers and first responders, as well as to citizens. In the first case, when we talk about first responders, we see that this has to do with fire brigades, policemen, and of course this also has to do with the trainers of those first responders. Three things are included in the training material. So this educational material has to do with the main training, educational training, operational training, and of course we also have the innovation of virtual reality. This is something that will be better perceived through the case scenarios that I mentioned before.
Όπως είπαμε, κατοίκους, κυρίως μαθητές.
The second part about the civilians is addressed to pupils from primary and secondary schools, residents of endangered areas, as well as citizens with disabilities and tourists. When it comes to the trainers, educators from primary and secondary school and also other trainers can go there. And the training material is categorized in two categories. We start from the training materials from children, mainly for pupils of primary schools aged 6 to 11, adolescents aged 12 to 18, of course adults, and last but not least the training materials for trainers themselves. So the first part is the virtual school, which is an innovative approach of the International Hellenic University, recognized by the Greek state, and the goal of this approach is for pupils supervised by their teachers to build 3D miniature models of their schools and using augmented reality to train in dealing with natural disasters, such as an earthquake, a flood, fire, injury, etc. Here you can see, for example, some cases of schools that have already done this training. And as we have said, we have the AR Tutor, a platform which supports the use of augmented reality in this training material. Here you can see we use augmented reality in the pictures. In order to implement the actions of this program, we have also created the educational material for the virtual school, which contains cards, which also contains educational scenario that can be printed out and used to train the pupils. We have also simple materials for the construction of the school model, a smart mobile device, preferably a tablet, the AR tutor that we have already mentioned, the augmented reality application, and of course an internet connection is also necessary. The second element is the VCR, the so-called virtual control room, which is also established, as we said, in the International Hellenic University. It is one of the most complete and modern VCRs all over Europe. We should not forget saying that the scenarios are not hypothetical or fictional. But those scenarios are the result of long-term interviews with industry executives, with field operators, and people who have tackled such disasters. So the VCR contains of two rooms. The first is the room of the trainees, which they can use in order to see what a managing room is like. We have consoles, workstations, touchscreens, displays, and the second room is the room of the trainers. And the trainers can control and monitor the scenarios of the trainees. And of course, here we also have the necessary equipment. And we should not forget mentioning that we can also give certificates, the first level and the second level, the advanced level. And those seminars can be used both of people of the industry, but also pupils and students. The main objectives of this training are to familiarize trainees with all the steps of crisis management, to be able to tackle a real situation if they find themselves in that place. And this is why we have prepared the syllabus, which is distinguished in 5 sections, starting from the introduction and talking also about the what-if scenarios and the certification. The VCR is running several industrial simulation models, such as the offshore oil and gas production platforms. Here you can see some of the displays that you can see in the simulation models, and some forms, some tools that are used, and of course the results that it can give us. We can see that there is a plethora of educational material. The third element is the consortium emergency management platform, which is a system that enhances the coordination and decision making during mega disasters, not only on a local but also on a regional and cross-border level. And it includes various tools, very useful tools. For example, the team management tool, the incident management tool, the hospital management tool, which allows us to see the hospital capacity, and patient management tool, which allows us to see in an organized fashion each separate person, in which condition they are. And here you can see also some of the displays of the system. And there is also the interactive map, which helps us to exchange messages, to locate in real time the participants, and also other tracking tools using various technologies such as the rescue light or the collector applicator, and of course the DSS tool that allows us to make decisions based on the data that are collected in real time. So by using all those elements, we have created the resistant platform. However, in order to be able to have real and reliable material, we have put up a questionnaire that has been developed for this aim among the first respondents and the participants. So after the analysis of the responses, we saw that what the people need is to focus on 2 phases. First, the preparation phase, and second, the response phase, to see if we can plan in order to save lives and help the people in danger, and of course, how at that point we should act. Other things that are asked that the training should help us find the resources that we need, the training material to be up to date, and of course to have a kind of communication. So we have put all this together in order to train the actors. We have the control room, which allows us to see on an operational level how we can train them, to see how we can also operate on the field, and how we can disseminate the information and to have a better communication. And of course, how we can train and develop new scenario in order to be ready for those cases in those scenarios. And we can see that when it comes to the webinar at the end of the program, we can also give certifications. Now, we are at the implementation phase of the first scenario. The first scenario, as we have said, is about training pupils and citizens of endangered areas. Responsible actor is the International Hellenic University, and it will take place between Greece and North Macedonia. We have prepared the training for children and adolescents in Greece and North Macedonia, in Piraeus, Chalkida, and Skopje. And there are two phases from pupils aged 6 to 11 and from pupils 12 to 18. There are, as you can understand, different material adapted to the different age groups, and it also has some steps. The first step is for the students to build the three-dimensional school model, to use then the computer or the tablet and a printer in order to use all the educational material and the instructions given by the ETSMA lab, and then to install the AR tutor in order to use augmented reality according the instructions of the scenario. Here you can see the feedback that is given through augmented reality. They use their mobile device in order to receive feedback for the model that they have used, and so children are educated and trained with a nice way. And here you can see the evacuation plan of the school that they have built after the virtual school training. Last but not least, we should mention that this project has an agora, a forum, so to say, and every interested party may participate, and you can find news, and you can find all kinds of interesting information and new findings that will allow us to use that material in the best possible way. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mrs. Cravary, for your detailed, very short and very good presentation of the project up to this moment. And now I would like to take the opportunity in order to ask the partners of this program, our partners, to share the view, share their participation or their contribution to the project up until this moment.
Καλησπέρα σας. Ονομάζομαι...
Hello, my name is Iasonas Aliferis. I am member of the board of directors of EPAIPS, who is the Hellenic Fire Services officers and sub-officers holding a university degree. We are an actor of resistance, and it is a rare honor for us that we collaborate with the Hellenic International University. EPAIPS is the only representative association of the services officers and sub-officers who hold a university degree in the corps, and we want to communicate and develop to communicate the need that our colleagues should and have as a goal in having further training, further scientific training. At the Resistance program, we have produced very important educational material that is at the disposal of every actor, every partner. And at the training platform, we have produced educational material regarding the evacuation plans that can be used by the first responders in conditions of earthquake and wildfires. And we have also developed educational material on wildfires, having as a focus the safety of the first responders. Our association is at your disposal, and we want to disseminate our knowledge and collaborate. Thank you very much.
If there are any partners, foreign partners, to this project and they want to contribute, the floor is open to them.
Καλησπέρα σας.
Hello everyone. I am the head of the rescue team, and right now I would just like to thank the project. I would like to thank the university. It's true that they have given us a subsidy, and this is how we were able to purchase the special clothing, the special uniforms that we need. That's all I had to say. Just a warm thank you to everyone. Dr. Halloris, the International Hearing University. That's all. That's all from me. Thank you.
Το λακωνίζει νηστή φιλοσοφία.
Very brief, very succinct. Thank you. So, until some of our foreign partners want to take the floor, well, democracy imposes the need to open the floor for questions, statements, comments by any of the members. Either they are here physically or online. So, we're here to listen to your questions. The comments of the microphone therefore cannot be translated, I'm afraid. Mr. Tsinakos wants the floor.
Okay, και μετά η κυρία... Κύριε Τσινάκο, έχετε το λόγο.
Mr. Tsinakos, you have the floor. Thank you very much. I don't know if you can hear me. Okay, so hello everyone. Hello from Kavala. Congratulations on this organization. I am Mr. Tsinakos and I am part of the Resistance project, and I'm head for the ETMA laboratory that is part of the Resistance project. I would just like to say a few things about the efforts that we are making in the context of this highly ambitious project. We try to combine the VR and AR technologies in order to ensure the timely training and awareness raising of young people, young pupils in the schools and the adults. In that way, we want to be able to educate and prepare people who want to stand by the side of the affected populations using specialized tools thanks to the VR and AR technologies. And there is another surprise that will come up later. Maybe in another meeting we'll be able to share more about this. The surprise has to do with the combination of those technologies and how, thanks to that combination, we can train people on site without needing for them to be there physically. So we combine virtual school augmented reality with what we expect to see in the VCR of the Hellenic International University. That's all I had to say. There's still a long way to go. We will find out more later on. We'll see how things will turn out with the virtual school, and I believe that over the next few months we will pave the way for a new training module on natural disasters and the prevention of natural disasters for all ages and all people. Thank you. Thank you very much. The lady here. If you don't have a microphone, feel free to come here and use mine. Well, I think you can hear me. It's not for us, it's for the attendants, for the participants who attend online. Okay, so now can you hear me? I am a teacher. I work at Madudi this year in Northern Avia, and my team and myself, collaboration with Fire Brigade and volunteers firefighters, we have been trying to hold a training in the school, always in collaboration with the headmaster of the school. My question is, why in the case of Northern Avia region, nothing has happened? I have witnessed the disaster that has taken place. Why no one has bothered to train the citizens? I believe that such actions normally should have already taken place because the rain period is nearing, and this is critical. Okay, maybe someone from the coordinators of the project would like to say something on that? Okay, I believe that this is very to the point. I believe that this project is in the middle of its elaboration, so maybe the coordination team, yes, Dimitris, if you want, feel free, but you need to come to the microphone. Well, I believe that you're right. I can see your point. Sometimes we, as members of the academia, tend to see this problem only from the academic aspect. And I have visited Evia many times over the past months. 1 week ago, I was at Niceros Island. And for the time being, hopefully, Niceros did not suffer the earthquake that Crete suffered, but they're having a 4th grade earthquake every week. And with a friend of mine, fellow professor, he said that all the school pupils, the children and the teachers were horrified due to the continuous earthquakes. What we can do, because we're not the state, we're a university. However, I guess Mr. Tsimakos can listen to us. The virtual school has already been offered, has already been implemented outside the Resistant project across 14 elementary schools. My dear friend Tsimakos can correct me if I'm wrong in terms of the exact number of the schools. The virtual schools that Ms. Cravery showed you, it's something that started being implemented and it was designed by Mr. Tsimakos' laboratory, the EDMA laboratory. This was implemented prior to the Resistant project. And it had also been demonstrated to Mr. Stylianidis, the current Minister for Crisis Management, and also to the current Minister Hardalias. What we can do is to work with you, to collaborate and prioritize your schools, given that floods, because, okay, you're no longer at risk of fire, earthquake, let's hope that no such case will happen. But flood, yes, it's something that might be upcoming over the next months. I have been working in this field for the past 30 years. I've dedicated my entire professional life. Maybe we can run the elementary schools that you will demonstrate to us. We can transform it into virtual schools in order to train the children and implement this project in the elementary schools in the area. We are more than glad to help you with that. I can give you my contact details. And in collaboration with the EDMA laboratory, we can prioritize your case in order to help those children, in order to train them to protect themselves and help themselves and others in the case of a disaster. Okay? Thank you. Thank you. Are there any other questions? Because I'm afraid we don't have much time left. The question is off the microphone.
Okay, οπότε okay, from Connectable θα γίνει μια τοποθέτηση.
Another statement will be held by Connectable. This will be to the benefit of both physically attending people and the online attending people.
So my name is Manuela Titorenko, and I'm representing Connectable. We, in this project, participate with our Concord platform. And we are now preparing for the training of participants in the use cases in North Macedonia and Croatia on how to use Concord for incident management. In this regard, we have created the interactive maps of the locations that represent the field training locations selected for the use cases in these countries.
I hope that you feel that this project is quite important.
Translation, yes.
Okay, but I believe that you feel that this project is quite important for your country as well.
Yes, and we also wanted to invite you, and I wrote already an announcement, but I will tell you also to join the Agora community.
Yes, we thank you for that. Okay, this is an ongoing project, so you probably will have to tell us more at the end of the project, when all partners will come out with this final conclusions. I thank you for your intervention, and now I have to pass the floor to Mr. Biliara. Θα πρέπει να προχωρήσουμε.
I'm afraid that we need to move on. To the demonstration of rescue team's equipment by the rescue team Delta. This will be head by Mr. Miliaras.
Θα μιλήσω και σαν εταίρος γιατί τα έχω
I will also speak as a partner with my dual capacity today. So hello, ladies and gentlemen, my name is Aris Miliaras and I represent Rescue Team Delta. In this workshop, we would like to demonstrate the equipment that we have bought within the framework of the resistance program. But before starting my presentation, I would like to say a few words on our team. So, who we are. Rescue Team Delta, consisting of volunteers, started in order to offer our services to our fellow citizens and respect the volunteers. It was established in 2018 based on various, and this is a member of the General Secretariat for Civil Protection of Greece with registration number 17/2019. We are a non-governmental and non-for-profit voluntary organizations, and our motto is together we can achieve more. So, what we do? We can respond to emergency and life-threatening situations that are life-threatening for the health and the safety of the citizens, and we can offer first aid, urban search and rescue, mountain search and rescue, set up and support camps for affected people. Our volunteers. Our team comprises over 40 members, which are very experienced as volunteer rescuers, but they have a high level of solidarity and responsibility. Most of them are first aid certified, and the skills on our team range from basic hiking, canoeing to free climbing and rope rescue. Our action. Assistance in emergencies and crises. For example, as it happened in the wildfires of August 2021. Our team was present at the fires and supporting the volunteers and the firefighters in Attica, Evia and Peloponnese. At the same time, we were giving cold water, hot food, eye drops and coffee to firefighters and volunteers, and first aids were needed. At the same time, we coordinated a small number of citizens in order to give their help in a safely manner, as Mrs. Karamanu said earlier. Moreover, we participate in the exercises of the General Secretariat for Civil Protection, the Hellenic Navy of the Attica region, of the Municipality of Piraeus, and for the Institute for Management of Human and Natural Disasters. We are alert. We are in a situation of alert for the Municipality of Piraeus and for the region of Attica. However, we can take action in any area of Greece and the neighboring states if we are asked to. We can also provide first aids in sports events. And last but not least, we offer medicine to remote islands. For example, we have a campaign, Offer the Medicine You Don't Need, and of course we organize first aid and disaster management seminars for citizens with the title, Do You Know How to Protect Yourself? Now, when it comes to our participation in this project, the Resistance Program, some indicative actions include protection programs that will be in which we will add new material on risk management from natural or man-made disasters, and which focus on individual aged to 12 to 18 years. So we will talk about firefighting, earthquakes, floods, and other disasters. More specifically, within the framework of the Resistance Program, we have chosen to include in the virtual school 2 schools, the second primary school of Neofaliro and the secondary school of Neofaliro. We will provide training for the pupils to deal with natural disasters and also protect them from similar hazards using mixed reality technologies. We will also train them in the use of the European emergency number 112. The students will be asked to build a 3-dimensional model of their school and use state-of-the-art technologies in order to be trained in disaster management, such as earthquake, flood, fire, injury. Now, when it comes to our equipment, within the framework of the program, we have bought the equipment that you can see here. At those pictures, we can see rope rescue equipment, including friction wrapper, devices, braking devices and other devices. Here, this is the vacuum mattress in order to stabilize people with multiple trauma, which allows various degrees of immobilization from the hardest to the softest, offering a decent control of the vibrations. It allows for excellent mechanical immobilizers, and it can be a thermal and electric isolator. Its reduced dimensions make it particularly indicated for use on stretches and wherever stocking space is a problem. Its fabric associates mechanical resistance with a versatile use in extreme temperatures, and it also guarantees a higher preservation of energy and therefore a dramatic reduction of the loss of body heat. It has materials of high strength we can adapt even for exceptional rescue conditions. Here we can see the Scad foam flotation system. This flotation system maintains the Scad in a nearly vertical position in the water. It is self-righting and keeps the patient's head completely out of the water, even in rough seas. The side floats and the chest pad provide buoyancy sufficient to support two rescuers in the water, as well as the victim, of course. And the lead shot-filled ballast keeps the foot end down and the head elevated always out of the water. Our equipment is here behind you, and you can come nearby and take a better look. Thank you very much for your attention.
Okay, I would like to extend the floor to partners of resistance, either from North Macedonia or from Croatia, if they want to use the floor to make any comments. Okay, Αντώνη.
Να επισημάνω ότι υπάρχουν...
I would like to say that there are one of two questions from the Zoom platform. Those questions will be answered. But by concluding this event, we would like to thank the municipality of Athens, since they have allowed us to use this beautiful space, Erafio, our dear guests, the participants, not only those who participated here physically, but also the people who have followed the event online. Moreover, we would like to thank the groups of volunteers, the students of the Fire Academy, and all the participants from the world of academia. So, talking as the president of the associations of the officers of the Fight Corps holding a university degree, I would like to say that not only that as far as we, the first responders, collaborate with the academia, we cannot stop disasters from happening, but we can be more ready, more prepared in order to manage them in a better way. Thank you very much. Professor, you have the floor. And a last comment, I would like to say that as a sociologist, I really enjoyed the effort done by the International Hellenic University and its actors and the other actors of the program in order to change, if you wish, our mentality, the way of thinking. And I would like to help towards this direction by mentioning a phrase. I cannot remember who said that quote, but I also like the comment of the teacher, because I have always believed that culture beats strategy. which means that the way that we are thinking is always better than being prepared. Therefore, we all have a common goal to change the way that we are thinking, to change the mentality that we have. Thank you very much. Before finishing, I would like to say that we will have a reception, and thank you very much.